Hey everybody, welcome to the Skybound headquarters. I do a lot of videos of flights and footage and all that stuff, and nothing you haven't seen before, but I always wanted to do a build video, a start to finish build video of a drone, and I have all the parts, so this would be a good time to go ahead and do that. It won't be completely start to finish since I have the frame already together. This is a Hyperlow CG, little brain 3D accessory kit with a TPU 3D printed stuff. I've got the motor screwed on, but that's it. There's nothing serious on here yet. But I have all the parts. I'd like to go ahead and do maybe just 3 or 4 videos, a little series or step-by-step tutorial of how at least I'm going to go through and build this. Might give you a little bit of insight and how to make things a little tighter, a little cleaner, so things aren't always breaking off your build. But let's go. Come on over. All right, so here we are at the bench. I've got this camera zoomed in as much as possible, so I realize it's not, especially once it gets to the flight controller, it's not going to be all that much detail, but I'll try to kind of, after I do each thing, I'll try to bring it up to the camera and at least let you see maybe a little bit better. But sorry if it's not in focus all that well. But the first thing that you want to do, or that I suggest you do, is kind of just do a dry fit of all your components before you even start to assemble anything. Just put everything where you plan to have it. So for this frame, or the Hyperlow has these kind of 2 plates. There's one here, and I like to put my flight controller in the center. But the VTX I'm going to be using is this Rush tank, and it is kind of the 4 screw mounted one. So I've already got this under these middle standoffs because I know that I'm going to want to put the flight controller on top. So that's why I've already got the VTX here. I'm going to plan to have the flight controller sitting right there. And I think what I'll do is up front, I probably won't run a beeper on this one since I don't plan to. This is just going to be a footage drone, so I don't plan to do any long range or kind of flying or crash or anything like that, but I could always put one in later. But I'm going to have my Crossfire receiver up here, and then I'll probably just set my capacitor right next to it, right there. So everything kind of looks good. That's gonna, I've already come and put the top plate on. Everything's gonna fit fine. What I've decided to do though with this flight controller is I'm actually gonna have the XT60, the power lead. I'm gonna have that running out of the right side. Normally what I do with these builds is I'll have it come out actually underneath the frame and up to the side. But since I have this different video transmitter right here, this Rush, I'm going to turn my flight controller sideways and have this LiPo lead just kind of tucked right here, and I'll probably zip tie it up close to the side just like this. I may need to remap some motors since I've reoriented the flight controller, but that's okay. All right, and if you can see on this capacitor, I've just extended these wires since I don't really want it just sitting right here kind of hanging out the side. So I've extended it with just some little wires I soldered up to each end, and I'll just I'll put that on the pads here, and then I'll tuck this capacitor in up there. That way it's a little bit out of the way. All right, so what do we need to do first? Let's go ahead and so we're gonna do flight controller, tin up, and ESC installation on this one. So let's tin up our flight controller first. I'm gonna put this blue tack. So this is Loctite blue tack. I'm sure you guys have seen a lot of other people use these in builds. I'm just gonna set a little bit here. So let the flight controller down. My flux pin is out of flux, so I have flux paste that I'm just gonna like take and dab a little bit. Just go ahead and brush up these pads with a little bit of additional flux in case I need it. I pretty much just brush it all over the pads here. Some of you guys might take issue with what I'm about to do. After I've built, just several drones and quads, I've found that it's easier for me just to go ahead and just tin up everything. Just run the solder over all the pads, and then that way any pad I want to use, I'll have solder on it. I found that actually seems to take less time than to just do the individual ones that I know I'm gonna need. And hopefully it'll work in this video, but I feel like I've gotten a little trick for that. So let's see, what we're gonna do is get our iron, get the solder. I'll try to bring it from this side so everything is in view. I'm gonna start with the LiPo leads, the LiPo pads back here, so it already heats up the board, and that should actually help me do what I'm planning to do in just a little bit. So feed a little solder on here. I'm gonna go ahead and touch this to the pad. As soon as I see that solder from the iron start to flow on the pad, go ahead and feed more on it. So yep, there we go. It's done. We'll need to go back and do our signal pads. All right, so if you notice, so we've got our LiPo leads 10, our ESC leads 10, or pads 10, whatever you want to call it. Now in here, between each of these two, you've got a ground and a signal. The ESCs that I have do have ground and signal, so we might as well use both of them. So I'll just tin up both of the pads in between these big ones. Now what I should have done instead of rushing in here is actually tin these small ones up first, but that's okay. We'll just go back, set it down. Don't worry about too much of bridging, because once you, if you guys notice, look at that. All I did, I just put this iron right down in there and just, here, let me bring this up. I said I'd bring it up every now and again, but I just set iron like right down in between those two things, and it took to both the pads. So I'm gonna do that for the same one right over here. All right, I'm gonna wipe my iron off. Retin up my iron. Just set it down here on these pads. Wait for some solder to flow onto them. And if you get it bridged like that, just hold it back on, and there we go, separate it back out. Do the same thing again with these two. I want you guys to notice what I just did. When I first soldered these two small pads, like I put the iron right there, I just put it right in the middle. I didn't try to do this one little one or this one little one. I just put it right in the middle with some solder, and then when I lit off, it was actually one big blob. If that happens, don't freak out. Just put the iron right back on it, jiggle it like a left and right just a tiny bit, and then when you let up, almost always they'll be back to their pads, because the solder wants to go to metal. It doesn't want to just cling on plastic. So we have all of our ESC pads 10. We've got the signal and the ground. Some of these have a little bit too much solder, but that's okay. That'll come off once we put the wires on. And so with ESC pads done, we've got our LiPo pads done. I'm gonna go and tin up just all of these, because I'll show you guys once I do it. To me, it's actually quicker than just doing the ones that I need. And that way I also have just anything available to me as I might want it. All right, what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna actually just start on these pads down here, and I'm just gonna run the entire board. And I'm not gonna worry about solder getting on like bridging pads or anything like that. I'm gonna start right here, and as soon as I see that solder start to feed, I'm just gonna slowly bring my iron down, slowly feed in more solder. I'm gonna run it back across, boom. All right, I'm gonna do the same thing here. Probably should have started at the back, but just slowly come across. I'm just dragging my iron, slowly feeding solder. And then what you can actually do is you can just take the iron back across. I can take it back all across those pads. And all right, we've got this one bridge right there. But boom, look, you see what I did? And see what I was talking about earlier? Don't stress out about the iron being exactly perfect all the time, because I had all these 4 pads bridged at once, and I put the iron back on, just kind of swirled it around a little bit, let the pads heat up, and then when I lifted it off, the solder head went back to those pads. So pretty quick. And do I need all those pads? No, but you know what? That's quicker to me than just doing the ones, you know, some of you guys may take issue with that, like, oh, you don't need extra solder, maybe it's extra weight or something, I don't know, but it's pretty quick. All right, let's see if I can get this in view again. I apologize if let me see if I'm getting my hand, yeah, let me see what we can do here to get my hand out of the way. If that last part wasn't even in view, you'll see what I did on this one. I'll make sure my hand's out here to the left. But I'm gonna start on these pads down here, or this one pad, feed a little bit of solder. As soon as it starts to heat up, I'm just gonna keep continually feeding solder in and just hold the pad, run it back across, done. All those pads are finished. I need a little bit more on this one right there. And okay, you see how it got bridged? I'm gonna take my iron back, just hold it for a bit, and it's separated. Pull it away quick, and it's separated. I'm gonna go ahead and tin up these as well. Same way I've been doing. Wipe this iron off. Let's see, tin it back up. I will just start with this pad here on the right. As soon as it starts to take, I'll feed some solder. Just gonna hold it down on these pads. All right, that one tried to get funny on me with them flipping everywhere, but here we go. I mean, none of the pads are bridged. We've got a little bit, I mean, there's a little bit too much solder right there for my liking, but, and right here as well, but that's the give and take of kind of this fast way of soldering. I could always go back and individually clean those up as well. But there we go. So we've got our flight controller tinned up. What do I want to do next? Okay, so next I'm going to put the power lead on. I've already trimmed this up a little bit, the LiPo lead, but I want to, so now I want to strip the ends of these wires. All right, strip those out. Come here. And I want to tin these up first. So what I'll do is I'll take a little bit of this tack again. Set these right here. I like to just press them down, and then we want to get some solder on the ends of these before we put them on our pads. So clean my iron off again, tin up the iron. There we go. Gonna hold the iron underneath the wire, just let it get some heat, and then keeping it touched to the wire, I'm just feeding solder in. It's heating up. I want to wait until that wire gets hot enough that it starts actually melting the solder itself. And we're not putting a whole lot, just a little bit, so that there's already solder on the wire. That should be enough. All right, hope you can see that. Same thing with the second side. We'll just touch the iron to it and then start feeding solder in onto the iron first, because the wire's not gonna be hot enough yet to melt it probably. So we'll start feeding solder onto the iron first, and then once the wire starts to get hot enough to melt it, we'll take it to the wire. All right, there we go, it's starting to melt. So just add a little bit more and let it get hot, sink in. There we go, we're done. And when you're working with especially the bigger solder pads, you might want to turn your iron up just a little bit, like maybe not quite full temperature, but at least 4 fifths, like 85% or 90% of the max temp. But this is what, let's see how that looks. What this light is doing. Here's how the two wires look now after being tinned up, and we're just gonna solder them here. I like to, what do I like to do? I like to turn it so that the LiPo pads are here, and then I'm gonna bring in the LiPo lead from this side, my left side, so that way I can actually bring my iron across. So before we do this, to kind of get this set up, I like to do a couple things. I'll just take this flux paste and I'll just kind of dip my LiPo leads a little bit in this flux paste. So I've got flux on there. I'm gonna put a little bit more on the LiPo patch right here. And while I'm at it, might as well just go ahead and dab a little bit on all the other pads before we put our ESCs on. All right, that should be good. All right, I'm going to use some tweezers, not those tweezers, these tweezers. Use some tweezers. Let's see, I'm gonna re-tin up the iron. I'm gonna take, let's see which is which. I probably need to know. Okay, so positive's closest to me. Take these, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna kind of heat up this wire a little bit, get it to where the solder starts to flow, and then I'm gonna melt this pad and I'm just gonna bring them together. So let's see if that works how I'm planning it. We got that a little bit heated up. I'm gonna heat up this pad a little bit. Now I'll start sliding together and put the iron back on kind of the wire. It may take a while, just hold that heat, don't get discouraged. Don't force it. Okay, it's starting to slide in. Hold the iron just a little bit longer, let everything fuse together. There we go. That is looking good. That actually looks real good. All right, let's do it with the other one. Hopefully I will not be in view. Let me come from this angle. Again, I'm gonna heat the wire up a little bit and then go to the pad. Let me put a little bit more solder on my tip here. All right, heat up the wire a little bit. Let that solder start to melt up some, get heated back up. Now liquefy this pad first. Now bring them together. Maybe try to get down with the iron so that it's touching both the pad and the wire. Don't try to force it on there, just hold that iron until it starts to slide in, which it is. Just be patient. I think that's actually good. Yeah, that's actually gonna be good right there. Let's see, so we have our frame now. Let me go ahead, these are T-motor ESCs. What is our time looking like? 20 minutes already, huh? Open up these ESCs. Like I said, this one comes with a signal and a ground. The signal is going to be the white wire, the ground is the black wire. What I want to do is I'm going to take just a little bit of this putty or this tack, and I can set it like right here on this arm. Since I haven't trimmed any of these wires, I want to kind of get everything fitted where I want it first. And I'm actually going to take my flight controller, I'm going to set it right here, get that where I want it, so I know the lengths I'm going to want my wires. I'm going to go ahead and put these little rubber grommets in too. All right, we've got all the grommets in. I want to get this the position the way I want it, which is to have the LiPos coming out this way, so that's good. I want to get my ESC kind of just positioned down where I'm eventually going to want it, or where I am going to want it. So just kind of get that tack down. And now here is where I'm going to go ahead and make my, cut my wire. So I'm going to go ahead and measure this off. Just make sure there's just the right amount of wire coming from the motor to the ESC here. So I'll clip those up. Really trying to, I need a better setup here because I feel like all you guys are seeing are shadows, my hands in shadows. Maybe if I come from, let's move this. If I put it in front. All right, so now that I've got the motor wires clipped, kind of the length I want, so when I solder them up here, I want to get an idea of how long I want my ESC wires to be. And when I pull them across, I'm just gonna, I want them the exact length, but just a tad extra space, So which is which here? All right, so here we've got our positive on our left. So that means this will be coming right here. That'll be a good length right there. Gives me a a little bit of wiggle room, click that. Positive's gonna come over here. That'll be good, just a little bit of wiggle room. And then we've got our 2 wires. All right, I'll probably snip right there. Definitely have a lot of newfound respect for anybody that does these videos, because it's hard to constantly think of everything being in view, you know, and getting that close up and having things where people can see. I'm gonna strip, just get all my wires stripped. You can either use your fingernails or just a wire cutter. Let's get this guy back on there. I want to tin these up as well, so let's get everything nice and kind of straight here. Let's bring our iron over. Just tinning these the same way we did those LiPo leads, like hold it to the wire and then feed solder onto the iron until it gets hot enough to absorb into the wire. And of course these smaller ones won't take long at all. All right, so we're ready to go ahead and put these on the pad. Yeah, remember these are kind of crossed, so the negatives go over here, positive over here. Let me double check that just to make sure. Yeah, that's right. So we've got our positive on the left there. But I'm gonna start with the smaller wires first, since that's easier. And if you look at, well, when I look here in these 2 small ones, one of them's gonna say S. All right, and then so that's gonna be the white wire, one's gonna say ground. So on this flight controller, the signal wires are right next to the positive. So we're going to do the signal will go on the left side, and then black on the right. Signal on the left, black on the right. Signal on the left. Black on the right. Right. So we've got those 2 done. Now, actually I should have done the motor wires first, but that's okay. Let's go ahead and bring over the positive over here. Flip-flopped over here. All right, let's get our motor wires taken care of, and we will have finished. Oh, you know what? I'm glad, yeah. First things first, what I normally do is I normally attach these motor wires down here, but that's all right. And then I'll feed anything you want, anything you want to put on here, whether it's a ESC guard, or I'm gonna put heat shrink on here, but just don't forget to put it on before you solder everything up, or you're gonna need to take it off. But luckily I remembered before I put the motor wires on. So I'm gonna feed this heat shrink on up here, spice it up, I guess, with a little bit of blue heat shrink. Let me go ahead and strip these wires down here. And these motors are the booster motors from, I think, November's FPV crate. All right, so we've got these motor wires stripped. We'll go ahead and tin those up and then tin up our ESC pad and try to finish this thing up. Alright, motor wires are tinned. Let's put those to the side. Let's get our ESC pads tinned up. So again, just make sure you're cleaning your soldering iron. I forgot that I still have this a little too hot from when we did the lipo lead. Again, just touch it to the pad and hold it and feed solder onto the soldering iron until you start to see it flow on the pad. And then once you see it start to flow on the pad, slowly lift away your iron and you're done. Just like that. So now all we have to do is just seal the deal, make the final connections for all these. Let's go back over. All right, here we go. Oh, I'm gonna take some of this tack and kind of put it underneath one of these motors so the drone doesn't slide around on me, hopefully. Right here. Let's try to clean these up just a little bit so they're nice and shiny. There we go. A little bit of flux will solve a lot of your problems. All right, so we have, check this out. We've got our motor wires soldered up to our ESC. And then pull our heat shrink over. And then we've got our power and ground and signal and ground middle soldered up here to our flight controller. So that's what we're gonna do with all of these other ESCs, and we'll come back once that's finished. All right, so since we were first soldering on that very first ESC, this is what I've done. I finished and got everything hooked up just the way we did the first one. I put our heat shrink on. Then I would have liked to have some ESC protectors here, like the metal ones I have on my other ones. But I feel like whenever I'm ordering new drone parts, there's always something that slips my mind or whatever it is, and the ESC protectors always just seem to be the thing that does. So I'm gonna live on the edge on this one and just run nothing but the heat shrink, and I put some good old-fashioned electrical tape just right here to tape it down, and I'll pop the zip tie over here just for extra measure too. So that's what we've done is we finished connecting all the ESCs, got them kind of tightened down and whatnot. And then also I went ahead and just soldered on. Remember I told you I was going to extend that capacitor. I put some heat shrink on the capacitor, and then I just, you know, had it extended with those wires. I soldered them to the main LiPo lead, and so we can just kind of tuck this right down in there. And that's where our capacitor will go. All right, but we're done. So we're done with this step. We've got the flight controller tinned up. And then I also realized, remember I turned this so the LiPo leads would be coming out the right side, so I could kind of tuck this up just right here. But now I didn't even realize this, but now I have the USB connector coming out the back, which it's a bummer because that means either I'll have to I don't plan on remapping or changing the flight controller, but maybe I'll get like a little 90-degree USB connector so I can access it from the side. But you know, worst comes to worst, I just have to take the top plate off to access the USB connector now. So I'll think about that, see if there's a easier fix for that. But it's, you know, I went ahead and updated the new beta flight on it and flashed it and put my PIDs and everything on there, so hopefully I won't need to be accessing the flight controller too often anyways. But that's it for this part. ESC is done, flight controller's done. We had the motors on from the beginning, but you know, I don't think I need to tell you how to screw on motors. But all right, so next we're gonna finish setting up the VTX, and we'll actually put our Crossfire receiver in next. All right, but that's it for this one.